I've fallen in love. She's beautiful, elegant, old-fashioned, but in all the best ways. Alas, she lives across the seas. But I really think we can make it work long distance. The object of my affection? This dress. She's currently housed in the Philadelphia Museum of Art, and oh my god, Philly is now on my bucket list. And what do we do when we're in love with someone or something that isn't attainable? We pour all of our unrequited love and attention into making a replica that isn't as good. In short, I want to make a dress inspired by this 1850s beauty, with its swooping neckline and bell-shaped skirt and captivating floral pattern on dark fabric. Now, not only have I found a fabric that I like, I've also found an event to wear it to. The fabric in question is this lovely floral print, which happens to be a bedsheet from IKEA. The nice thing about using bedsheets is A, you get a ton of fabric for less money than you would pay normally, and B, this is 100% cotton, so it's designed to be lovely and breathable, which is going to be perfect for a dress to wear in the summer. The event in question is my dad's wedding, which has been put off 5 times so far due to COVID, so I feel like I should make an extra effort and concoct a celebratory outfit befitting the occasion. I am going to be adapting this so it's a little more modern. Obviously, the fabric is fairly modern, it is not an 1850s appropriate print, but also I'm going to be shortening the skirt and adding a zip in the back. So without any more rigmarole, let's get started. So what I'm really going for is just the bodice here with that pointed front and back and then the shaping on the front. I don't really care about this so this is called a bertha. Yeah, I don't really care about that, or the bows, because they're not on the original. Sorry?
Sadie?
Yes?
There's a ladybird on my laptop.
Okay.
Can you tell?
Yes. Right, ladybird crisis averted. What was I saying? Oh yes, so I really only want this pattern for the shape of the bodice. I'm not worried about the bertha here because that wasn't on the original dress that I am interested in. So this should make it fairly economical in terms of how much fabric I'm using. Hooray! Okay, so overall I think this looks quite good. I haven't added the sleeves obviously, and there's a little bit of like gaping in the sleeve there. I'm not entirely sure what to do about that. I mean, that could be solved just by bringing these shoulder bits up and then perhaps deepening the neckline, because I do want this to run off my shoulders, especially as I'm planning on putting a little bit of lace just at the top here. So that's an option. In terms of the fit on the rest of it, I'm pretty pleased with it. I mean, I'm going to have to tidy up these bottom bits obviously. Arm size possibly a little bit wide on the bottom here. Yeah, see that? I'm not a huge fan of that. I might just add a little bit there. Yeah, I'm still not totally sure about this kind of gaping here. There's no such gaping on the original, obviously. What I'm going to do is I'm going to have to do trial and error. I'm going to try taking it off, pinning some of that just out of the top, and then, yeah, then I'll try it on again. So after pinning this out so it goes up more like the seam on the original thing, it's actually quite dramatically changed the neckline. On this side it does go straight up, whereas this, just having this extra material pinned out, has pulled it down into that a bit more rounded shape. So I really only need to cut off just the tiniest of bits here just to make this fully rounded. There is still some gaping here, but I had a revelation. Obviously I'm not shaped like the corseted figure underneath the original dress. On the real thing, the corset would obviously be shaping it out here, there'd be a little bit more padding perhaps, and then obviously the bones will be pulling this down. So I'm not going to worry about that bit of loose stuff there anyway, because I do need a little bit more arm movement than the lady who might have been wearing this to the ball. I mean, apart from anything else, if I do any dancing, I need to be able to get my arms up. I mean, come on. So I think that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to cut this down here, obviously bearing seam allowance in mind, and then just trim a tiny bit there. I'll leave the back how it is. You can't see the back in the picture that I've got, but I think it's going to be okay, to be honest. Cool. So I've unpicked the dart, and then this is where I pinched out the fabric. So this was like that. And then where I pinned it, I did some very bad lines in pen. This is really bad. But I did enough that I can kind of see the shape I'm going for. So what we'll end up with is just one panel that goes down there, and then a side panel that goes up into the sleeve. Okay, so this is a much better fit. I haven't cut any of this away because I think I'm gonna make the skirt before I decide on the final cut of that, so I can just see how it all fits together. But in terms of this area, we're looking much better. This seam here, on the original it just sort of went straight up, and I know that there's a quarter underneath, but on this one it sort of goes out and then in, and I don't really like that look. So I think what I need to do is, on this centre front panel, I need to bring this in a bit so that we just have one straight curve going up there. But obviously it's already a little bit tight on the girls here, and we don't want to make it even tighter, so any space that I take out here I kind of need to displace here. The waist is fine, so we don't need to like just add a band into the middle, but maybe from like here up, basically from where I'm changing that, just make that a little bit wider on each side so we get a bit more space here, and this isn't strained, so it'll form a bit more of a natural curve there. I'm not going to worry about that now. I think I'm just going to do that on the fly. I'm sure it'll be fine. So now I think I'm going to add the sleeves and just check that they fit okay before moving on to some actual fabric. Now to attach the pockets to the skirt, we need to first attach each half of the pocket to each side seam of the skirt. So this is the skirt panel, this is the pocket panel. We're going to attach along this edge so that this is the bit that will be seen when the pocket lies open a little bit. Now you may notice that this looks a little funny because this is wrong sides together rather than right sides together. So because this fabric is so fine and is quite prone to fraying, I'm going to do the pockets with French seams. So French seaming is where you stitch with the fabric's wrong sides together with a very tiny seam allowance, then you fold it back on itself so that the fabric's right sides together, so this side will be against this side. And that just means that where normally your seam allowance has flappy bits like this on the back that are raw, the flappy bits will both be turned in and be finished without me having to fell them, which will save a lot of time and a lot of confusion because I'm not entirely sure how to fell all the seams on pockets when you insert them the way I'm going to. I've had this YouTube channel about 5 months, and it's taken me until today to realise that I don't have to keep stopping my podcast every time I use the sewing machine because I can't hear it. I just put the headphones on. They told me I was smart. So I had to hand sew the back skirt seam on the train because I am running out of time. And look at this seam, like I wouldn't know it was hand sewn if you told me. It looks just the same as any machine seam I've done. Obviously I've pressed it so it looks all nice and neat. I did it with a running back stitch. I did a little bit of back stitching at the end. Oh, it went a bit wonky there. This bit here where it opens, this is going to be where the placket is and where we have the hook and eye which fastens the skirt. So because that's obviously going to be opened quite a bit, I wanted that bit of the seam to be able to take some strain. Right, so I've done my top stitching. Beautiful, happy days. Got a nice little corner at the bottom. A little bit off centre, but oh well. No one's gonna notice. But why? Why does this happen? Honestly, fine. Thread vomit, and then fine. What is going on? I mean, I'm not gonna do anything about it because it's on the inside and no one's gonna see it, and if I try and unpick it and do it again, it'll make this really unneat, but why? I'm feeling really jammy because I cut the edge off the duvet, which is the bit that's already folded. So didn't need to fold it. Also, already got a folded bit of edge there. So when I put this on the skirt, that's just gonna pop over the top and I'm gonna fell it down and it's gonna be perfect and I'm not gonna have to do any work. Ha! Just dropped my pin pot, didn't I? Didn't I? Oh my... Look, I don't even have a magnet. I don't even have a magnet. Please ignore how grubby the floor is, by the way. My plants normally sit up here and they... Oh god, look, they're just... Oh. Turns out I did have a bag of magnets. Look at that. That's not even all of them. There's so many more. Of course, after entirely sewing these on, I've realised I've sewn them on the wrong way, because the hook needs to be facing that way, so that the eye can look into it like that. That's better. So the skirt is finished. Ugh. Well, apart from, you know, hemming and felling the seams inside, but it's fine. I can do those on Friday night at the last minute if I have to. For now, I'm going to focus on doing the bodice, which I'm very excited and very terrified about. Sewing on the hooks and eyes took far longer than I expected, even without the whole doing the eyes the wrong way around. So I've now essentially got a day and a half to do the bodice, which is fine. I can do that. Now this is the point where I would normally sit and think about all the stuff I have to do and get really scared of it and procrastinate loads, but I'm not going to do that. What I do in these situations is think, okay, what's the first step? And for me right now, the first step is going to be getting up and going and having lunch. Because I am hungry and you can't sew on an empty stomach. Aside from that, the first step is going to be pinning pattern pieces to the fabric. And that's all I need to think about. I don't need to think about cutting them out, I don't need to think about sewing them together, all of that stuff. I'm just going to pin the pattern pieces to the fabric and we'll go from there. So that is my hot tip. If you're procrastinating, think of that one tiny first step. Also, I don't know if I've mentioned this little red mark here that was a full-on bruise last week was where I opened a glass door onto my face. I don't know how one gets to 25 and still can't judge the space between you and a door, but apparently it's possible. Okay, so here's my ingenious plan, right? This is the canvas and I've got a double layer as it's got one piece per half of the bodice. I actually hate pinning pattern pieces to fabric. I hate pinning into paper and the way it sort of rumples, and I worry that the shape is going to be wrong and it's just too stressful for me. So what I'm going to do is, as you saw, I pinned the paper onto the canvas, traced around it. I've now pinned the two layers of canvas together so I can cut them out. I've also done excessive pinning around this dot so that I can mark it from the other side. And then what I'm going to do is one half, like the top half of this layer of canvas, I'm going to use as the pattern piece for the main fabric, and the bottom half I'm going to use as the pattern pieces for the lining. So it's quite stiff, so it'll hold its shape, it'll keep things nice and stable, and it's just going to be nicer than pinning into paper. But I am going to have to be really careful about getting the grain lines to match up, so I'll probably still use the pattern pieces and sort of layer them over the top just to check that I'm in the right place. Okay, let's cut these bad boys out. This is also a prime example of how I am terrible for overestimating how much fabric I need. That's what I need. That's what I bought. Bearing in mind this is double layered as well. Possibly the only thing about this that is actually historically accurate is the lining, because I have read in my book that I mentioned earlier on 19th century clothing that at this period the bodice would have been lined in white cotton, which is what I'm lining it in. So it's probably not as high quality as it would have been in the 1850s. I'm going to be stitching it in with a machine, and not a Victorian machine either, but there is one detail that is slightly historical about this, and it's on the inside, so no one can see. Also, just want to show you my jumper here. This is one of my favourite jumpers. It's distinctly Halloweeny, but I refuse to be moulded by society into wearing jumpers for one day of the year. Right, all the pieces are cut out. They are pressed, even though I'm suddenly seeing all of these creases on camera, but they have been pressed. And now we get to do a bit of hand sewing, which is lovely. Well, look, I'm watching a lovely video with some lovely people about confidence and how to put yourself out there in what you dress. So I'm taking notes. Right, so the instructions have told me to flatline the main fabric with the interlining. So this is that canvas layer that's a bit stiffer. So what I've done is I've put the side where I've marked this dart placement on the bottom, so I'll be able to see that. And then I'm going to put the main fabric down right side up on top of it, and then after I position this and pinned it, I'm going to baste these together just around the edge, just using a running stitch. And I could do this on the machine, but I prefer doing it by hand because I feel like you have more control over exactly where these edges are lining up. And then once that's done, I'm effectively going to treat this as a single piece. So when I sew things together, I'll be sewing through 4 layers of fabric rather than 2, and this is going to give the main layer some stability. So rather than putting just sort of a layer of interlining in between the main fabric and the lining, where it might slide around and fold about, we're going to secure it to the main fabric so that everything is more stable and stays put. I just finished the video. I feel ready to cry, but in like the best way. It was so inspiring. It was just a delight from beginning to end. I thoroughly recommend it for anyone who is just trying to find a way to be themselves, trying to get the confidence to wear different clothing. It's really worth a watch. It's called Confidence, How to Put Yourself Out There. It's on Kathy Hayes' channel. You'll recognise it because it's the one that's like nearly 2 hours long. But, you know, if you're willing to spend 2 hours watching a film, then why not a YouTube video? Especially when it's just full of absolute gems of wisdom. I've just had so many epiphanies in the last 2 hours. Apparently, none of them were how to thread a needle. For those of you who don't know the people who I showed, there were Kathy Hay, Bernadette Banner, Zach Pinsent and Constance Mackenzie, who are all people who dress differently. So Zach Pinsent always dresses in Regency clothing, I believe. Bernadette Banner and Kathy Hay tend to be more Edwardian. I think Constance Mackenzie started off doing like 16th century and now is more Victorian, Edwardian. But all of them mentioned something about being bullied in school or being not part of the popular group or being sort of ostracised. And I always say, oh, kids suck, oh, kids are the worst because of the people who bullied me in school. But it's really taken watching that video for me to realise that not all kids suck, because the kids who don't, like the ones who are getting bullied, are the ones who bloom into these fantastic, unique, wonderful people. And to be honest, I'm sure some of the bullies do as well. I'm sure they thoroughly regret their actions. But one of my cousins once said to her little boy, you know, there'll be a time in your life to be yourself. While you're at school, just try and fit in. It'll make things easier. And while I get what she means, I completely disagree. I think that these experiences have all been incredibly formative. Oh my god, why is this so hard? As soon as I put it on camera, why do they make needles with an eye that's just slightly too small for the thread? What do they gain in doing this? There we go. Now I don't wear particularly unusual clothes, but I feel like I'm kind of at the beginning of my journey to doing that. I just gotta make them. But I gotta say, to any of you who either are struggling or did struggle with bullies in school and thoroughly resent them for it, one day you may find that you are exactly the person you want to be, and none of those horrible past experiences can take that away from you. And the whole reason I felt able to start this YouTube channel was that I saw there were these people online who were just as weird as me, and there were hundreds of thousands of people who were like here for it, you know? So many people who were supportive, there are so many people who want more of that in their lives. So I suddenly thought, well, if there are hundreds of thousands of people who are here for this person's weirdness, maybe there'll be people who are here for my weirdness. And I don't know if I am fully myself yet on camera. It's still a little bit strange to me. And it's annoying because I'll spend the morning while I'm getting ready just before I say getting ready, I have not gotten ready today. But when I'm shooting when I'm shooting sort of an intro and outro and I'm getting ready for it, I know exactly what I'm going to say and exactly how I'm going to be. And I'm totally myself and I'm totally at ease, and as soon as the camera turns on I go, ah, and panic. I'm not entirely sure where I was going with that. Oh yes, no, the weirdness. Yeah, never give up hope that you're going to find your crowd and that people are going to appreciate you for how weird you are, and never give up hope that you're going to find something that just makes you happy. All I'm doing is a flippin' running stitch and I'm so happy right now. That's probably a good sign, isn't it? real look with the tights. What can I say, I'm a trendsetter. But I thought this would be a better way for you to get an idea of the shape at the front and the back, although I do have this flappy bit of zip because I need to shorten it. It fits! It's very exciting. I haven't put the bones in obviously, and I haven't got the lining, so this neckline will be 1/2 inch lower because of where I'm going to turn it in, and I will hopefully have sleeves. Although to be honest, I don't hate the look without sleeves. Obviously everything would need to be tidied up and I do want to add lace, so I am probably going to add a little bit, but I'm not going to add much, I don't think. I'm just going to add a little bit of ruffly goodness, and otherwise I'm really pleased. I've managed to make something that fits. Bearing in mind that a lot of this front bit was kind of self-drafted. I did take in a bit in the middle because those of you who are more experienced in sewing who might have looked at my pattern pieces and thought, at the centre front where the pattern piece sort of bowed out like this, which meant that this middle bit bowed out like that, and my chest doesn't do that. You know, I've already got the shaping on these seams. I didn't need further. I don't have a third boob that's bigger than the other two, so I didn't need that bit. So all I did was I just sewed up that seam in more of a, where it curved, I just sewed down it in more of a straight line. Yeah, I'm pretty happy with that. I will obviously have to be careful when I'm cutting this and making that go down like that, not to cut it too high, so that when I put the skirt on you're not going to see flashes of skin. So next step is to press all the seams, because the seams still aren't pressed, and clip the seam allowances, and then I need to fix boning to it. So there's going to be boning down the side seams, on the darts, and up the centre front seam. Do I want to add sleeves before boning? Probably make things easier. When have I ever done the easy way? I think that was the money shot. did it. Caramba. I didn't want to do this apology at the beginning because I wanted to just get straight into the video. But if you've made it to here, I reckon you're in it for the long haul. You may have noticed we are in a different environment. This is because in the time between finishing the dress, going to my dad's wedding, and now, I've moved. This is also why there hasn't been a video in like 2 months or something. So it has been a little while since I made the dress. But this is good, right? Because it means anything I remember learning from it is something that was worth learning. So what have I learned from this experience? I've learned not to procrastinate editing video because otherwise it takes me 2.5 months to get one out. But in terms of dressmaking, I actually think it went pretty well. This is my first sort of vaguely historically inspired piece since I did the Rincewind costume back in January, and I think it went quite well. I loved the pattern from Truly Victorian. I loved how customizable it was to my own measurements, and I actually really enjoyed the mixture of using the pattern and self-drafting those front panels. I would love to try doing more self-drafting, and now that I have the space to do it, hopefully we're going to be seeing a bit more of that. What didn't turn out so great was definitely the zip in the back. I should have just measured and gotten a zip that was the right length, or gotten a zip that completely undoes at the back so that I don't have to undo it just to the bottom point and then shimmy into the thing, which you haven't seen because it would expose me, but it's not exactly graceful. I also kind of wish I'd found a way to put bones in the back so that I could have had those curved seams boned. I just couldn't figure out how to make synthetic baleen like curve that way. Like, I know you can curve it like that way, but that way I just couldn't really figure it out. The only other thing would be the shape of the skirt. It hasn't quite got that characteristic bell shape of the 1850s and 60s. It kind of looks more like a 1950s skirt, which is kind of cute. I sort of like the mix and match, but that's entirely down to the petticoat. And I made that petticoat in 40 minutes just before I got in the car to drive back to my parents. So it was literally just a massive long rectangle of white cotton, elasticated at the top and hemmed at the bottom. It was better to have a petticoat than none at all, because the skirt definitely did need poofing out, but in the future I might try and make a flounced petticoat like they had in the 1850s that just helps to poof it out a bit more at the top of the skirt. However, all of these things that I have mentioned are due to the fact that I gave myself a week to make the thing. You would think after the Rincewind situation where I tried to make 5 18th century inspired garments in 1.5 months while I had COVID would have taught me a lesson, but no. It was incredibly stressful trying to make the whole thing in a week and having a hard deadline, but it also taught me that I never want to go on the Great British Sewing Bee, which is a valuable lesson. Despite the stress, I really enjoyed doing this, and I desperately want to do more historically inspired things, but give myself more time to do it so I can hand sew where necessary and finish things to a more professional standard. Thank you for following my forays into dress history. It was more of a dress history video at one point because I had a book, this book, that I was basing a lot of my research on to do with how to make the skirt because I didn't have a pattern for that. And a week before I started editing this, Abby Cox released a video in which she said that she did not like this dress historian specifically because he doesn't reference any of his findings and that it wasn't a credible resource. So I felt a bit of a fraud including it in the video, so I didn't. But there was some historical intent there, it just didn't pan out the way I wanted. Thank you for watching, everyone. It's been so much fun. I'm glad to finally be back, and now that I'm in my new place and I have more room and I'm in a better headspace to make things, I will be back with you soon for more crafting, more chats, more general chaos, all that good stuff. Bye!